Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm going to be commenting on an article titled What You Need to Know About Making a Midlife Career Change by Dawn Papandrea. She is a contributor for Monster.com. And since a lot of people are in transition in their career, I thought this would be the perfect time to take a look at this article since it speaks specifically to people who might have not been looking to change careers but now are forced to, due to this current situation going on in the world. So, let's just go ahead and get right into it. She starts, "You've probably heard the saying, you're never too old to do X, Y, Z a bunch of times, especially in reference to starting a new career. If you're 50 plus, you may be wondering just how feasible a midlife career change really is when you're closer to retirement than you are to your school years. The truth is, launching a new career or going to a vastly different job route in your later working years isn't just possible, it's also more common than you might think. According to a recent Monster.com poll, 50% of respondents between the ages of 45 and 65 has switched careers at least 2 times. For some older workers, their primary skill sets or line of work may become obsolete, while others might have physical jobs that can become more challenging as they age. Other older workers might simply be bored with the job they've been doing since they began working and now want to try something new. Whatever the reason, launching a second career is doable if you approach it with the right mindset. Of course, it's also true that switching careers is not without its challenges. For instance, you might have to take a pay cut or have to deal with the weirdness of not being one of the most experienced people in the room. In some cases, you might be deemed overqualified, yet for some pursuits, your lack of experience could work against you. On the other hand, today's job climate is favorable for older workers who want to pursue a midlife career change." So just a caveat, this article was written, before this whole kind of situation in globally kind of was happening. So, this part is a little bit inaccurate right now, but the point still stands. At the time this was written, there was a really good low unemployment rate for workers 55 years of age or older. That the Bureau of Labor Statistics pointed out. So she says, if you're considering a new career, here's what you need to know. First thing is timing is important. A career change is something you plan for, not something you wake up one day and suddenly decide to do. The idea is to plan your move for when you feel like you've gotten the most you can from your current profession, and you also feel confident that there will be ample opportunities within your new field of interest. Again, this was written at a time when there was, the unemployment rate was really low. But now, with people losing their jobs and, a lot of people just being in transition due to a lot of industries being affected, the career change might be something that's a little bit more, spontaneous than what this article may have had in mind when the author had in mind when she wrote this article. She continues, after multiple engagements as a CIO at several large public sector organizations, VJ George made the change to management consulting when he was close to 50. He's now director of technology consulting at Bridgepoint Consulting, an Addison Group company. I made the switch. I felt I had a lot of experience to help multiple organizations with their own technology strategies, he says, and I wanted to learn from other industries and companies. Switching careers should never be an impulse decision that you make because you feel fed up with your current job. Unfortunately, things are a bit different today, and again, I hate to keep bringing this up, but the truth is there are a lot of people who were in stable careers and they weren't looking for something different, but unfortunately they were forced out of their jobs. And now they're like kind of like, what do I do now? My industry just collapsed. I got to figure something else out because I still got like 15 more years to work before I retire. On the other hand, there were people that were really considering a career change into a new field, but now they are staying in place because they're afraid of ending up in a worse situation. So the job market for a lot of people is stale. So your approach is going to have to be different if depending on if you just want a new job versus if you need a new job. And that's, I think, the big difference between some of the things that this article is talking about versus, considering what's going on today. So, you'll have to consider the changes you'll need to make in your life before you just jump ship. jump ship. Will this require a lifestyle change? Will you need to move or commute farther? If you still have kids in school, is this going to mean your kids are going to need to change school districts if you end up moving? You're going to have to decide what things are important to you and what life is going to look like before you make your decision. Being in the, 40, 50 demographic, and I would even, put late 30s into this as well. In some cases, you're gonna have to consider more things like kids and family obligations, spouse's job. These are all things that a 23-year-old who's just starting out isn't even gonna have to think about. So before you even think about transitioning into a different career, you got to consider those things first. So she continues, your experience goes with you. Changing careers should feel a bit scary, but ideally it will be at least easier than starting your first career. That's because you now have a lifetime of work experience under your belt to bring to the table, even if it isn't directly related to your field. Use any transferable skills to help you gain employment, says Gina Curtis, Executive Recruiting Manager with Employment Boost, a professional outplacement and resume writing service. For example, if you have years of experience as an executive assistant and are responsible for a lot of administrative work, those same skills can be applied effectively in other roles, such as a paralegal position, she says. Many of my skills from being a CIO were transferable into management consulting, says George, including knowledge of the sales cycle and being able to see things from a client perspective. How much of your experience will be relevant really depends on how different your new career is from the old one. Something to keep in mind when you're researching options. Do your best to find a career path that aligns with the trajectory of your background, rather than going in a completely different direction, recommends Curtis. So a career journey is kind of like a bell curve. When you first graduate, you're faced with the challenge of you need experience to get a job, but you don't have any experience. So new graduates always ask, how do I get experience when I can't get a job because I have no experience? But, as your career goes on, you hit a certain point, like your, late 40s, early 50s. The question now becomes, now I have too much experience and they won't hire anyone with too much experience because they don't want that person. They might think that person's going to be too expensive. That person may become too bored and leave sooner than somebody that's not as paid as high or not as experienced might. So it's kind of that double-edged sword. It's the opposite ends. Now you're just got to figure out how to tailor it, to fit or customize this or adapt to the situation on the opposite end. So besides highlighting transferable skills, make sure to emphasize how throughout your career you've been able to adapt to new challenges and how you overcame those difficulties. So this is going to show that you're going to take on whatever comes with a new role and that you're not going to be the person who is always like, well, at my old job, we used to do it this way. Like they mentioned above, you got to look at the direct trajectory of your own career path, but also the trajectory of the business. So you'll need to be careful about how you lay out your skills. Highlight the accomplishments you had in previous roles that relate to the job you're applying to. This is going to come from doing some research on the position and asking good questions in the interview. So let's say, for example, you are applying to a position where you'll be responsible for increasing revenue for a particular product line. In the interview, ask what the metrics are and what might be some things that a challenge in hitting those metrics have been, or if they've had issues hitting those metrics. And then you can relate back to your previous experience where you hit your metrics during a down economy, or you implemented specific strategies and developed new ways to motivate your teams to success in similar circumstances. Show what you've done in the past is tied to what the business wants to do in the future. Also, you want to make sure to show how this job is tied to your own career path, but maybe you've always wanted to work at a place that is this size, or how you've wanted to always work there because it has a reputation of being innovative and you want to gain experience working on outside of the box projects. So you got to look at all different perspectives of not just my skills line up with the job. That's great, but if you're coming in, you got to turn your advantages or your disadvantages into an advantage. So, use experience as your asset. You've overcome things that someone in their 20s probably hasn't. You were hitting career goals when the person in their 30s was just graduating college. You've made more mistakes than you can count, and you've learned from all of them, and that's why you now know that you can help this new business thrive. use that to your advantage. So she continues, you need to brace yourself for challenges. Although you will never be too old to reinvent yourself, there are some challenges you'll face as you get further along in your career, says Curtis. Take those looking to start at the entry level in a new sector. Employers tend to be concerned that you are too experienced or afraid that you may go quickly out of lower level positions, says Curtis. If you're taking a pay cut, you may also face a transition period when it comes to your finances, or perhaps you might have a gap in your health insurance coverage. And finally, there's a psychological toll of having to prove yourself all over again, something you might have not had to do in some time. You need to have some humility to take a step back and learn a new business and model, says George. So another thing that people struggle with as they are later in their career is the potential of the fact that they're no longer the big person on the block anymore. You know, you may spent 20 years building your career and finally got to the place where, you know, you had that seniority, and now you're sitting in new employee orientation with people who look like they just graduated college. You know, your new boss might be 15 years younger than you and doesn't have nearly the experience you do. So not only are you having to prove things to yourself, you're starting from square one. The key is to remember that you're on your own path, not theirs. As a good friend of mine always reminds me whenever I kind of get frustrated with my own career journey, is he says, you know, there's no straight arrow to being accomplished. It's a maze of zigzags. So while you might have the title you once, or you might not have that title you once did, or the seniority you did, you're still on the right path because this is just a step in the process. It's not a detour. You know, success is not linear. So the article continues, be open to new learning. If you're looking to make a drastic change, say going from a graphic designer to an acupuncturist, you might have to take a few classes at the very least, or perhaps complete a full-fledged certification or degree program to qualify for work in the field. For adults looking to pursue a midlife career change, a degree or other educational program is often the best way to develop the necessary skills, says Lori Quinn, Provost and Senior Vice President for Academics at Champlain College. Most higher education institutions, especially those that cater to adult learners, will work closely with you to find ways to maximize transfer credits from other institutions and even find ways to get student credit for non-academic experiences, she says. And don't stress about being the oldest learner in the room if you do decide that you want to go that route. What was once the exception is now more than ever the norm, she says. What we see it in our college classes as increasing numbers of adult learners on the first day of class are introducing themselves as career changers, retirees, and grandparents. You know, I had interns and staff that were much older than me when I managed large facilities, and guess what? I loved having them on my staff because I loved being able to ask for input on how things were going for improvements. There are some managers that might be intimidated by someone older than them. You know, they might fear that the person is out for their job, or maybe they feel threatened because they know that person is more experienced than them. But for me, I found having, you know, staff that were, you know, more tenured and more experienced than I was, and older, were much more willing to be open and honest about how things were going. You know, they had experience and were able to see some things that I just couldn't see sometimes just because I didn't have that experience. Don't be ashamed of being the oldest person in the classroom if you go back to school. As I mentioned above, you know, a lot of adults in their 40s and 50s are back in school. And again, when I was in community college, I went to a 2-year community college, and most people in the class didn't even think twice about it. You know, what was interesting is, like, it wasn't like those people that were older were treated any different. You know, people still invited them out for happy hour, study groups, or whatever. You'll be as much a part of things as you want to be. You know, another thing is, you know, be a great support person for your new boss. If they're younger than you, don't come in and act like you know more than they do. You know, instead, if you see something that might be a better solution, just have a normal conversation with them like you would anybody else. You know, a simple, hey, I noticed something and it reminded me of when I was in my past job. You know, we tried that and it didn't work because of whatever. But I just wanted to let you know because we ended up doing this instead, and that actually worked a lot better. You know, just have a conversation. You know, again, you're going to see things that other people might not, especially, you know, if you're transferring into a new role that you still have some, like, again, they're talking about those transferable skills. If you have transferable skills, you're still going to be able to pull back on experiences that, you know, other people aren't going to have. So that kind of concludes the article. But I just wanted to wrap everything up, just kind of highlight a few key points. And the first one is timing is important in most cases, but no matter if you want a new job or need a new job, it's always best to remember to make sure they know that you want that job, not just a job. Number two, look at how this new job will potentially affect your life and what will that entail? How is it going to affect your personal obligations? Number three, your experience is your asset. Make it relate to the goals of the job. Number four, this is just a part of your journey. Show how this job is important to your career path. And number five, always be open to learning, whether it's taking a class or listening to your new coworkers and boss, and be willing to help others learn from you too. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this video. But if you liked what you heard, please, by all means, give me a like, comment, and subscribe. You can check out my website, www.pbeatty.com, which you can download a free copy of my ebook. It's a problem-solving guide called You Got This, a small guide to solving big problems, which will lay out a process for any sort of like issues you may have or challenges, and it'll kind of help you kind of walk through how to overcome whatever it is that you may be going through. So again, take care, and I will speak with you soon.